Let's walk the talk.
702.
All right, we speak now to the DA's Federal Council Chairperson. Helen, good morning. She joins us now via Zoom. I haven't spoken to you. I think I last saw you at the IEC. How are you, Helen?
That's right, Tshidi. I'm well. I hope you are well too. It's lovely to be talking to you again and your listeners.
Very good. I'm in very good spirits. Let's speak about the GNU. I know that there was a big meeting that everybody kind of looked to over the last weekend, between the ANC and the DA. My expectation is that there'll be more talks, at least between the two, before a greater meeting with all the other parties. Where are the talks now between the DA and the ANC at the moment?
Well, we had a very frank discussion. It was cordial, but it was very frank, and both sides put their concerns on the table vis-a-vis the other side. So that was useful. It's a kind of regular clearing of the air that we need. And then we agreed, especially going forward, that the counterparts would have to meet much more regularly. That means the President and our leader, John Steenhuisen. That means the Secretary General of the ANC and myself. And so we can proceed because we each have different lanes and we each have different responsibilities, the various counterparts. And if we can keep the channels clear at that level, we should be able to resolve many problems before they become crises.
One of the things that the ANC was talking about in the lead up to the meeting was punitive measures, reading the DA the Right Act, in part because of a transgression of cabinet protocol, cabinet ethics. I did not in my head think that that would go down well where you read a right act to another political party. That conversation about where the ANC feels the DA's ministers had stepped out of line. How did that go down? How was that received by the DA? And what does the DA now understand it needs to do as long as it remains in government?
Well, when the ANC says we have stepped out of line, we simply ask, where did we step out of line? I mean, if you look at who stepped out of line when we were negotiating as the main coalition partner with the ANC, the resolution on the budget impasse, they went out of line and went and started having talks with parties that were not in the government of national unity or the coalition. So that really is stepping out of line. It's not stepping out of line to have very direct and straightforward and sometimes even tough talks inside the government of national unity. That is normal for a coalition. What is abnormal is to go behind the back of the main coalition partner and then start trying to get a new majority outside of the GNU. In most countries in the world, that would bring down the coalition immediately. In fact, in every country in the world. But the ANC still thinks that it has the right, irrespective of whether it is in a coalition government or not, to do what it likes to get its own majority. So the ANC doesn't really know what the implications are of the statement of intent that it signed. And we reply to them and say, well, look, this is what the statement of intent requires you to do. This is what you haven't done. Now, who has stepped out of line?
But Helen, that's in reference to the ministers as far as cabinet's concerned. And I think what was being flagged, if I understand it correctly, would have been John Steenhuisen condemning the president, declaring Russia's Vladimir Putin a valuable ally and friend. I think it was about Sivukwa Khube not being present at the signing of the Bella Act into law. It was about D. McPherson and his opposition to expropriation. That's what I think they flagged. It's those issues where they felt that the ministers who serve and at the behest of the president was seemingly in the public domain undermining his leadership and the government posture. It's that accusation of the DA being seen wanting to be in government and in opposition of the government while serving inside it.
Well, Tshidi, the statement of intent is very relevant here. We agreed that when we went into this government of national unity or coalition, we agreed that there would be no sealed mandates. We also agreed that all decisions would be taken on the basis of consensus, and if we couldn't reach consensus, we'd have sufficient consensus. Now, for the ANC unilaterally to formulate foreign policy and make statements that fundamentally oppose the DA's policy without any discussion, well, that's violating the statement of intent. And therefore, we have to say to them, but foreign affairs, international relations, there are no sealed mandates, none whatsoever. And therefore, the the statement of intent comes into play. You can't pretend that international relations is a sealed mandate.
And then as far as
also the critical point is, the critical point is, yes, the president does appoint cabinet ministers, but there is an agreement that the DA has 6. And there is an equal agreement that John Steenhuisen gets to choose the DA 6. So there might be a constitutional provision for the president to choose cabinet ministers, but in a coalition, he's not free to choose any DA person he likes. He's only free to put into those positions the DA people that the DA puts forward to him. I hope that's clear.
yes, that we understand. But Helen, I'm still going back to, and I know you're referring to the statement of intent. What they were flagging, if I understand correctly, is ministers who are serving in the president's cabinet seemingly acting as opposition to particular decisions. I understand, and I take your point around the statement of intent. I take that there are no sealed mandates. But the part where in the public's eyes it feels that there are ministers who oppose the direction, oppose the authority, undermine the authority of the president. That's what I thought was raised as an issue. Is that point not valid? You don't see that point?
Well, the thing is, it's not all about authority and status and public perception. It is about substance and reality. So, for example, if the president has not reached agreement with the DA on the signing of the Bella Act, as he's supposed to in terms of our agreement, then he can't expect the DA minister to go and be with him at the signing because he's violated the previous clauses that require agreement. So he can't expect us to go there and put on a show when the underlying substance isn't working.
Okay. The DA, as it stands today, Helen, is intent on staying in the government of national unity. You realize that it's still workable, it's still important to remain there.
No, we're not intent on remaining in the government of national unity. We will take decisions on a day-by-day basis. We have still several rounds to go in the fight against VAT, and we believe we've got a good chance of winning that fight. So you don't leave a government when you are going to, when there's a good chance that you could win. Not a guaranteed chance, obviously, but a good chance. And we've still got a few more very tough rounds to fight on the Expropriation Act, and we think we will win that too. So we're not going to abandon that fight midway. We are going to see it through to the end. But that doesn't mean to say that we are forever wedded to the GNU or the coalition. We will take decisions on a day-by-day basis. And if the ANC continues to violate the statement of intent, and if the ANC continues to refuse to share power with us, as they're supposed to do, then at another point we may take a totally different decision.
Does this then suggest that you are going to continue with the court matters on expropriation as well as budget? That's not going to change.
Yes.
Those who are asking you to withdraw are
absolutely.
incorrect.
We're going to continue. No, we're absolutely going to continue.
And just to speak about the way the DA's managed itself in these coalition talks, a lot of the small parties I've spoken to consistently complain about a DA that doesn't want to engage the smaller parties. I've asked some people in the DA and it almost feels that it's inconsequential, that the DA thinks that they're inconsequential. But when I look at the GNU and the way it's formed, it's almost like everybody is actually not in a coalition with each other, but with the ANC. And I think that's part of the reason why a reset might be a necessity in order for the coalition to work well. But there's a view that the DA wants to continue with the big brother attitude and doesn't want to engage the others, that it isolates them. Just your reaction to that. Is it a misunderstanding, or is it actually a fact that you're not interested in speaking to smaller parties, that you think that they are inconsequential?
The thing is with the smaller parties is that they always, and the most recent examples are Gauteng and the Government of National Unity, they always side with the ANC. Always. And inevitably. And let me tell you why they do. Because the smaller parties in the cabinet, let me use the cabinet as an example, the national cabinet, they serve at the behest of Cyril Ramaphosa. The DA does not. The reason is that the DA has a large enough electoral mandate to be there on the will of the voters. And the voters who voted for the DA and the ANC can make up a majority in government. So if any of the other smaller parties want to be there, they have to please the president because they have no voter mandate to help make a majority. And so the president can kick them out if they do anything that displeases the president. So, of course, it's not surprising that they all side with the ANC the whole time. And that's why the people who voted for those smaller parties, who thought they were voting for opposition parties, have now found out that they weren't actually. They are voting for ANC proxies. And the problem is that we find that very, very difficult. Action SA went into the election with one message to voters. Quite a number of voters voted for them. I think gave them 6 seats in Parliament. And they used those 6 seats to prop up the president because they want a seat in the executive and they want to get a cabinet post. So we don't work like that because the voters gave us a big enough mandate to hold what is called the balance of power. And all voters for those smaller parties are taking votes away from the biggest opposition party and giving them to smaller parties who then support the ANC. And we've been saying that forever and ever. Now, when we entered the GNU, and I go back to the statement of intent because we've all agreed, and we agreed again this last weekend, that that was the founding document. That is the founding document. And clause 24 of that founding document says, after the signatures, which the DA and the ANC and the IFP, because they were a founding party, had signed, the admission of all other parties into the GNU had to be done by sufficient consensus in terms of clause 18 and 19. The ANC simply ignored that. They went on and signed the statement of intent with a whole lot of other smaller parties because they were precisely thinking of the kind of situation as with the budget when all the smaller parties went and voted for the fiscal framework with the VAT increase in it. So that's exactly what they were doing. They violated the statement of intent literally on day 2 to bring in other smaller parties. We could have broken up the government of national unity right then, but we decided to continue fighting and arguing that the ANC had to hold by the statement of intent. And they've been violating it on and on and on. And there will come a point where we say the ANC is not serious about this. And that is why we've got a bill before Parliament making coalition agreements justiciable and legally binding. That is what we have to do.
You've had so many red lines, Helen. You know, the one thing that's happened over the past few months, and it's interesting that you say you could have broken up the GNU from day 2 if you wanted. There's been so many red lines that we've seen the DA speak of and literally walk back on. What that makes me think about a little bit of is even now, Helen, to want to continue in a GNU where you feel unheard, unseen, is almost delaying the inevitable.
Tshidi, we definitely heard and we definitely seen. We have stopped the fiscal framework going ahead. We are going to stop expropriation without compensation in the Expropriation Act. We are definitely heard and we are definitely seen. And our place in the GNU is going to be determined by whether we can still be heard and seen and make a meaningful difference. Now, the most important thing we have to get right in this country is to grow the economy and to create more jobs. There's nothing to be proud of that for every taxpayer, there are 4 people who receive grants. That needs to be turned around if we want to become a viable society and a viable democracy. We have to have 1 person on a grant for every 4 people in a job. And that is the biggest change that we need in South Africa. And that is why we have to grow the economy. And that is why we have to have policies that enable economic growth. And that is the biggest fight we have to have. The reason we're fighting the Expropriation Act, which was one of our red lines and remains our red line that we have not walked back on, is because when you have a law that says people's property can be expropriated by a state official without compensation, you are going to have no international investment. It's just simple. And when you don't have international investment, you're not going to have economic growth and you're not going to have jobs. These things are obviously rational, and we have to make these points again and again and again. Equally with VAT. VAT is going to make poor people poorer. An increase in VAT is going to make poor people poorer. And that is why the DA is opposing it. We've got far too many poor and unemployed people in this country, and they have to be protected. But more than anything else, we have to have policies that grow the economy and get them into jobs.
Helen?
The only thing that we were bulldozed on was the Bella Act, which we were very angry about. But the Bella Act and the Expropriation Act and a couple of others come from the 6th Parliament.
Absolutely.
Every time the ANC needs our numbers now, we can use that leverage, except when the parties, the smaller parties, who promised to oppose the ANC when they went to the voters, quickly support the ANC to beat the DA. That's what they do all the time. And voters must now get it.
Helen, just very quickly, I'm supposed to be taking an ad break, but I can't, now that you speak about leverage, I can't leave without asking you, do you look back at the initial negotiations and think you actually blundered there? And I asked Dean McPherson this question before, and I said, you helped them elect a president, and now they can outmaneuver you, they can find other formations and other ways to make sure that the government stays intact. That you should have maybe thought about some of these issues that you put on the table now at that time. Do you look back and think you could have handled the negotiations differently?
Tshidi, if you look at the statement of intent, read it again. I'm sure you have read it before. Read it again. You will see that every single clause that we needed to get in, the proportionality clause, the sufficient consensus clause, the other parties joining the government of national unity clause, they're all there. We had 2 weeks to negotiate. In Germany, they negotiate for 6 months. Here, our constitution requires that we set up a new government in 2 weeks. There is no ways that we blundered. What we didn't realize was the ANC would simply ignore the statement of intent. Okay. Simply ignore it.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick break.
Outside. Okay.
Let me take a quick break. I'm getting in trouble with Abel. I'm going to take a quick break and I'll come back to you. Just hold on.
Talk the talk.
This is 702.
10:26. It's almost past. I was in conversation with Helen Zille, the DS Federal Council Chairperson. I feel like 30 minutes with Helen is never enough. There are lots of voice notes and WhatsApps. I do see you all. I want to try to play at least one of your voice notes so that you don't say I ignored you and kept to alter myself.
Good morning, Tshidi. This is Jack from Hammanskraal. Regarding Helen's remarks there, they are the ones who came up with the phrase, you can't have your cake and eat it. So you are very right to say they must decide if they are going to be inside cabinet or leadership of Ramaphosa as a president. They must just toe the line as far as cabinet is concerned. They can have their own views outside of cabinet, but where they get it wrong is that they want to differ with cabinet and also want to retain their own originality in their own party, which is not a problem. But if they are outside of cabinet, then they are well within their right to think and act any way they like. So when ANC said they stepped out of line, they really did step out of line. And whatever they think the ANC should or should not do also applies to them because they are a junior partner in this relationship by virtue of their own choice. This is Jack from Hammanskraal.
Thank you so much, Jack from Hammanskraal. Helen, do you want to give Jack a response quickly?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jack, and thanks for phoning in and putting your point so articulately. Let me say that you speak from the point of departure that the ANC as the bigger party is still the boss. That is not true. The ANC can't govern without the DA. And all the other the far left-wing parties, which we don't want in government, because that will destroy the economy, and then we'll have an unemployment rate of 60%. But the DA is there to speak up for DA voters. We are there to speak up for the people who voted for us. We do that in cabinet, we do that in parliament, we do that in the government, we do that everywhere, because that is why our voters put us there. And that is what we have to continue to do. And we do that everywhere and all the time. And because there is a coalition government, and because we are in government, the decisions of the coalition government must find a consensus between the DA and the ANC's position. Now, obviously, we know that we are the smaller partner in this government, and we can't have everything our way. But we've got to have some things that go towards us. It's not the ANC instructs and we abide. It does not work like that in a coalition government.
All right, Helen, please hang in there. It is almost past. I want to take a slight break again. If you're willing to indulge me to stick around, just want to pick at one or two other things with you before I let you go. We're going to go to a quick break for headlines, and then we can come back. Can you stick around for a little bit, Helen?
Yes, I can, but I've got somebody delivering something to my house, and my husband's having to deal with it at the moment, so he's not happy. So I'll quickly go out.
Go deal with that while we take headlines, and then you can come back. Thank you.
Walk the talk.
702.
10:34, Clement Manyathela show, Tshidi Madia in for Clement. We're in conversation. I'm trying to mop up, squeezing the last few minutes with Helen Zille, the DA's Federal Council Chairperson. I've asked her to stick around for a little bit. Helen, I just want to also speak about from the DA, from an internal perspective, because there is still a difference of opinion from my reading about whether or not it serves the DA best to be in the GNU or to be outside of the GNU. How's managing that, particularly when tensions are heightened, as we saw them quite recently over the budget?
Well, the DA has structures and systems that debate these issues and draw a conclusion, and then everybody abides by them. I've noticed that is a fundamental cultural difference between our two organizations, the DA and the ANC. In the DA, if there is a question, should we stay or should we leave, we call a federal executive. We debate the issue from all sides. Everyone is free to air their views and make proposals. We have a motion at the end. People either support or reject it, and whichever way we go, everybody abides by it. That's how we work. I've noticed the ANC doesn't work that way. They don't like putting a clear question on an agenda for decision at the National Working Committee or at the NEC. They kind of let everybody talk but never take a decision, and certainly never a decision that is written down and signed and sealed and delivered. That is a fundamental way that we differ in our internal cultures. And in the DA, we take decisions, and every time we call a FedEx, which is every time we have to take a major decision around the GNU, we have a debate, and often that debate revolves around should we stay or should we leave.
Do you read what's been happening around the GNU talks between the ANC and the DA, the NWC and your own FedEx, as an attempt to create an environment for constructive dismissal for the DA? Is that how the DA is reading it?
Well, I mean, there are definitely people in the ANC who want to constructively dismiss us. They want us to leave on our own accord because they know what will happen to the economy. The rand will go to 25 rand to the dollar. A lot of international investment will pull out literally overnight, and the economy will really seriously tank. So they don't want to take responsibility for that, especially not in the international climate now, where South Africa is being punished hard by some of the major powers in the world. They don't want to be responsible for making that worse, for losing, for example, all our citrus exports, etc., etc., etc. So they want us out, but they don't want to be seen to kick us out. Now, that's not everybody in the ANC. That's a part of the ANC, under Paul Mashatile and Gwedi Mantashe, etc. So they're very divided. But unlike the DA, they don't have these discussions openly, put a motion on the table and take a decision. They work very, very differently.
I'm glad you mentioned Paul Mashatile, because my reading has been that the DA seems to have pointed out the deputy president as a target, as a person that they seem to think has a problem with the GNU. It's quite consistent, that view from the DA.
Well, it's not as if the DA is pointing him out. He's pointing himself out. I mean, he went to, I think, some SACP conference and was dancing around on the stage singing, "I see you funi GNU." We don't want the GNU. So, I mean, that comes from his own mouth.
Talking about.
I see you funi GNU.
No, I know what you're talking about. Was it the special congress last year? I'm not Xhosa speaking, so I can't help you. Listen, just before, again,
Okay,
I'm trying to wrap up very quickly. Hold on, I'm trying to wrap up quickly. The DA went to the US. We've seen AfriForum making the same trips as well as Solidarity. There's an issue where, on paper, while one is a fringe group, one is a legitimate political party that's serving in our government, seem to be very much aligned on race-based policy issues. Yet you are in a coalition where those matter. Part of redress, part of getting South Africa to work is in part dealing with the race issue. There are policies that parties that are in the GNU are in favor of retaining and sharpening and making sure that they work better. How do you navigate also that, where the DA again is acting outside of where the greater view is. And that will speak to consensus, and not just between the D and the ANC and the IFP, but the broader GNU with all the other parties there.
Tshidi, I think you invent things. We went to the United States to say to Donald Trump, if you do not like the ANC, and if you do not like Dubuli Bunu and things like that, please don't punish ordinary South Africans. Please do not take us out of AGOA. That'll cost us hundreds of thousands of jobs. Please don't slap on a 30% tariff on our exports, because that will cost us 300,000 jobs in agriculture. Please do not punish the people if you don't like what the ANC and the EFF are doing. That's what we went to say in America.
I'm looking at that statement now where you do speak about race-based policies, but I'm going to leave it there. I'm definitely out of time. Thank you so much for your time. Helen, you have a Congress. You have a Congress. Hold on. You have a Congress next year. Are you coming back or are you done?
I don't know. I don't know.
Are you interested in continuing to serve or are you not?
I'm definitely going to work till the day I drop dead. So bad luck to all of the people who want me out of the way. But what I'm going to do, I don't know.
So that's definitely coming back.
Are you going to come and roast me, Tshidi?
Am I?
Are you going to come and roast me, Tshidi?
Oh my goodness, you're going to be part of that roast. No, I'm definitely not. I'm giving that a skip.
Please come and roast me.
No, I'm giving it a skip, Helen.
People are too scared to come. People are too scared to come and roast me.
You know I'm not scared of you, but I'm not participating. Thank you so much, Helen. That's Helen Zille. Don't dare me. That's Helen Zille from the DA. She's the DS Federal Council chairperson, speaking to us there about the GNU.